Kale Reiner woke to the sterile scent of ozone and the soft rustle of silk, neither of which made sense. Last he remembered, his smuggler ship, the Drift Fox, had been tearing through the asteroid ring of Cellari Prime, its hull battered by Lissari orbital drones. He'd been one thruster away from disintegration, shouting curses into the void while rerouting power and hoping the ship's AI would hold off the next strike. Then, the flash. The impact. A shriek of metal and stars melting into darkness. Now, he lay on a bed unlike any he'd ever slept on. Satin soft, scenting faintly of a floral perfume foreign to Earth. The room was large, softly lit, with curved glass walls that opened to a cityscape bathed in pink and silver light. No chains. No cuffs. No obvious guards. He sat up cautiously. His side ached, ribs bruised, but nothing broken. Someone had treated his wounds. Even his shirt was clean, replaced by loose robes of Lissari design. Elegant. Blue trimmed in gold. He was not dead. Worse, he was alive and somewhere inside the Lissari dominion. Captured. A low voice interrupted his dazed scan of the room. "You are awake." Kale turned. She stood by the window, tall, cloaked in iridescent silk robes that shimmered with every breath she took. Her skin was a polished bronze, kissed by soft bioluminescent veins that pulsed faintly at her temples. Her eyes, an unblinking blue-silver, reminded him of old oceans on Earth, deep, ancient, unknowable. "I'd offer you breakfast," she continued, "but I suspect you'll be more interested in the terms of your survival." Kale rubbed his jaw, noting a healing cut along his chin. "And you are?" "I am Empress Virelia of Lysar. This is my city. My palace. And, currently, your prison." "Well," Kale muttered, swinging his legs off the bed, "you've got excellent taste in prison decor." "Very, spa chic." Virelia showed no amusement. "Sit. We have matters to discuss." He didn't like being ordered, but sitting seemed better than getting tossed, so he complied. A table emerged from the floor, smooth crystal that formed at her gesture. Upon it, a digital scroll flickered to life, suspended in midair, lined with alien glyphs and translation overlays. Kale squinted. "A contract?" "A proposal," she said. "Your arrest could lead to your execution under Dominion law. Or, to a partnership of strategic importance. That's diplomatic for, I want something from you." He leaned forward. "What is it? Intel? Navigation codes?" She stepped closer, her tone even. "Genetic material." Kale blinked. "Excuse me. We've monitored your biology. You carry sequences resistant to nanoviral decay, immune to Lissarian sterility drift. We believe your genome could be key to preserving the Lissari race." Kale stood, scoffing. "So, what, you want to harvest my DNA? Clone me?" Virelia's eyes gleamed. "No. I want you to breed with me." Silence fell. She let the statement settle, watching the emotions flicker across his face, shock, confusion, a hint of horrified amusement. He laughed dryly. "I'm sorry. I think I inhaled too much smoke." "Did you just say?" "I said what I meant," she interrupted, stepping toward him. "The Lissari are a proud race, but we are faltering. Fertility is declining. Our gene pool is collapsing. My people will not accept integration with lesser species. But I am Empress. I can command exceptions. And I chose you." Kale stared. "That's a hell of a pickup line. You will be compensated. Handsomely. You will live in comfort. You'll want for nothing, except the freedom to leave. So I'd be your, what? Breeding stallion?" She frowned slightly. "Your tone is crass. And yours is insane." He paced now, hands clenched. You dragged me out of a dying ship to make me your glorified gene donor. Do you Lasari even hear yourselves? Virelia remained composed. It is a gift. We do not select just anyone. We have reviewed hundreds of candidates. I'm not a candidate. I'm a person. You are a survivor. Adaptable. Hardy. Intelligent. Your physiology meets over 92% compatibility with my own. You are genetically optimal. Kale gave a bitter laugh. Yeah, I've heard that line before. Usually from governments trying to draft soldiers. She tilted her head. You were military once. His jaw tensed. Not your business. It became my business when your escape path crossed my border patrols. He sat again, shoulders tight. You've got everything here. Technology. Power. Why not just replicate my DNA? Cloning yields instability. Our deterioration lies in expression. We need true integration. Kale rubbed his face. Let me get this straight. You want me to sign a contract that says I'll sleep with you? For science. It is not merely sexual, Virelia replied. It is ceremonial. Genetic union through shared resonance. A ritual older than our monarchy. He stared at her. This is insane. It is survival. Kale stood abruptly, backing toward the wall. You don't get to trap people and call it survival. You don't get to steal autonomy and put it in a pretty box. Virelia's gaze narrowed. You would prefer the cell. I'd prefer choice. The Empress approached until she stood barely a foot away. He didn't flinch. Her hand reached out, not to strike, but to gently touch the edge of his cheekbone. You are different, she murmured. I've been told. He didn't soften. You will think on this, she said finally, withdrawing her hand. You have 3 days. After that, the offer expires. And so does my patience. The next 2 days passed like honey poured into glass. Slow. Sticky. Too quiet. Kale wandered the suite, examining every corner for hidden tech, any escape route. Nothing. Every window was unbreakable crystal. The doors sealed with gene-locked biometrics. Meals arrived via automated trays. Scented steam. Perfectly balanced nutrition. Every comfort but freedom. Each evening, she visited. Virelia never came with guards. Just her, calm, collected, always watching him like a scientist studying a rare creature. But she never repeated the offer. Instead, they talked. About Earth. His time as a pilot. The smell of rain. The chaos of his past. She told him about the palace, about growing up as an heir, about the pressure to preserve rather than live. She had never spoken to a human before Kale. Not outside diplomacy. You always talk like you're alone, he said once. I am. Doesn't sound like much of a throne. It's the only one I have. That night, when she left, Kale found himself watching the door long after it closed. On the third day, she arrived with no preamble. No contract. No performance. Just her. You've decided, she asked. Kale stood slowly. He hadn't shaved. Hadn't changed out of the robes they'd given him. But something in his eyes had shifted. I won't sign a contract that makes me property, he said. Her shoulders tensed. But, he continued, I'll help. Not because you told me to. Not because I owe you. Because, maybe I want to understand why someone like you would trap someone like me. Virelia blinked, startled. And maybe, Kale added, I'm tired of drifting. Tired of running. You want a partnership? That means equal ground. No labs. No quotas. No scientists poking me. She studied him. Really studied him. Finally, she nodded. No quotas, she said. No poking. He stepped closer, voice gentler now. If we do this, it's got to mean something. Her voice dropped. It already does. Ashvara was a dead moon. Its skies were always overcast, the air a swirling haze of rust-gray clouds that carried the metallic tang of ozone. Beneath them, bone-dry craters and the husks of ancient battles lay untouched, like fossilized memories. No native life, no water beyond the recycled breath of the domes, just old wounds no one had dared revisit until now. Leora Venn adjusted her oxygen filter and stepped into the airlock chamber. Her boots clicked softly against the floor, every step echoing louder than it should in the quiet diplomatic dome. She wore the charcoal-gray uniform of the Earth Coalition's Envoy Corps, formal but flexible enough to run if things got ugly. Which, if history was any guide, they often did when the Fexans were involved. Envoy Venn, crackled the voice in her earpiece. You're cleared for the central chamber. The Fexan delegate is already waiting. Of course he is, she muttered, brushing dust from her shoulder. Fexans are always early for things they want to control. She passed through a final set of transparent security doors, and the negotiation chamber opened before her like a stage. It was circular, minimalist. Transparent walls offered a hazy view of Ashvara's war-scarred surface. At the center stood a table made of polished obsidian. And beside it, leaning with calculated ease, stood the man she'd been sent to meet. Torian Syth. He looked nothing like the warlords her intelligence file had suggested. No ceremonial armor, no weaponry. Just a long, midnight blue coat over dark tactical wear and a calmness that made her skin itch. His hair was dark, swept back carelessly. His eyes, the color of molten bronze, studied her with amusement and something else. Something she refused to name. You're late, he said without accusation, his Fexan accent smooth, slightly rasped. You're smug, she replied, circling the table. Comes with the bloodline. Along with war crimes and bad diplomacy. That earned a small smile. You must be Leora Venn. Earth's golden voice. Gilded, maybe. Not golden. She took her seat. Let's get to it. He sat opposite, and for a moment, there was only silence. For the next hour, they reviewed the Treaty of Void Fields, a dusty old ceasefire agreement barely holding the two systems apart. Earth wanted the disputed wormhole corridor reopened. Fexan leadership wanted reparations. Neither side was budging. Your offer of 300,000 metric tons of plasma gel is laughable, Torian said flatly. You want access to our corridor? Pay for it properly. We're offering energy, not surrender, Leora snapped. You burned half our outposts a decade ago and called it strategic deterrence. You're lucky we're offering anything at all. Strategic deterrence is a lovely euphemism for retaliation, he replied, not unkindly. But I'm not here to relitigate the war. I'm here to end it. Quietly. Permanently. She narrowed her eyes. Then stopped posturing. He leaned forward slightly. I was exiled for speaking out against the war, Envoy Venn. My presence here is treason to some of my people. This is not posturing. That caught her off guard. You were exiled, she repeated, the edge softening in her voice. 6 years ago, he said. I refused to sanction the orbital strikes. They made an example of me. Now they call me back to clean up the mess. She stared at him. Why agree, then? Torian looked past her, out into the swirling gray of the Ashvara landscape. Because peace is the only war I still believe in. That night, the official negotiations paused. The dome's artificial night cycle dimmed the lighting to a cool twilight hue. Leora stood alone on the balcony, watching the old battlefield glow under Ashvara's pale moons. The scars were still there, blackened husks of mechs, outlines of trenches now fossilized. No life. Just silence. You think it remembers, came Torian's voice from behind her. She didn't turn immediately. The moon. He stepped beside her, his breath forming a faint mist in the cold air. I think battlefields remember everything, he said. Even after the victors forget. Leora looked at him. In this light, he didn't look like a diplomat or a prince. He looked like someone who carried things alone. I read your file, she said softly. They left out the exile. I asked them to, he replied. I wanted your judgment to be fresh. You're not what I expected. Disappointed? She smiled faintly. Not yet. Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't sharp this time. It felt, suspended. Hanging in the cold, like something delicate. I've spent a lot of years fighting for things I didn't believe in, he said quietly. And then I stopped fighting, and they called me a traitor. Leora nodded. And I've spent my career talking people out of killing each other. And every time I walk away from a room, another war brews. She exhaled. Sometimes I wonder if diplomacy is just delaying the inevitable. Torian glanced at her. And yet, here we are. She met his gaze. Here we are. Something shifted in the silence. Not spoken. Not agreed. But felt. The second day of talks was sharper. Earth's ambassador sent a coded message mid-session, ordering Leora to walk away unless the Fexans agreed to an energy corridor concession. Leora, against protocol, didn't. She stayed. Torian noticed. You're going off script, he said after the session. She shrugged. Maybe I like improvising. He smiled. I knew I liked you. She looked away, cheeks warming. This isn't a date, SYTH. Yet. That night, they met again, not as envoys. Not as enemies. But as people. They stood beneath Ashvara's twin moons, their breath mingling in the cold. I should not trust you, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You shouldn't. And yet. I do. He stepped closer. The galaxy keeps pushing us to choose sides, he murmured. What if we just chose each other? Leora's heart stuttered. You don't even know me. I know what I feel when I'm with you. And after all I've lost. I trust that. Their hands met. Hesitantly. Then fully. When their lips met, it wasn't frantic. It wasn't diplomatic. It was real. It was everything the war had tried to erase. There was a time when Aaron Tall only spoke in orders. He'd once led rebel fleets through the vortex clouds of the Kesri expanse, screaming tactics into a war-worn comms channel while watching his comrades burn. He'd spoken for liberty, for justice, for Earth, and for the thousands crushed under the heel of Dominion forces. But that was before. Now, he spoke softly. Politely. Measured syllables and carefully placed pauses. The voice of diplomacy. Ambassador Tal, said the AI attendant, appearing as a shifting cloud of light. You have arrived at Arctis 9. Shall I announce you to Director Mori? Aaron shook his head. Let me find her myself. He wanted to see her before she saw him. Arctis 9 was unlike any station he'd ever visited. There were no security checkpoints, no weapons. No soldiers. Only art. The walls of the orbital colony pulsed with holograms of living sculpture, shapes that responded to proximity and heartbeat. Paintings shimmered into being as he passed, reflecting his mood. Music played at random intervals, generated by the station's AI from fragments of memory it stole from passers-by. It was beautiful. And unsettling. She was here somewhere. He felt it. The reason he'd agreed to this assignment. The one person who could make him forget the war, and the fact that she no longer remembered him. Celise Mori. He found her in the atrium, barefoot, her arms dipped in synth paint as she dragged her hands across a curved canvas taller than he was. Her hair was cut shorter now, silver-streaked and braided tightly against her scalp. Her skin bore the faint circuitry of high-grade neural enhancements that traced along her collarbone like jewelry. But her face. It was the same face that had once fallen asleep beside his, under a ragged thermal blanket on a rebel gunship. The same eyes that used to trace the stars with his finger on her shoulder. She didn't look up. "Celise," he said quietly. She turned, expression blank, then curious. "I'm sorry," she said. "Do I know you?" It cut deeper than a blade. Aaron smiled gently, covering the ache. "Aaron Tull. Diplomatic envoy from the Human Union Assembly. You're Director Mori." "I am," she said cautiously. "Welcome to Arctis, 9. Sorry for the paint." He chuckled, even though it hurt. "Art looks better when it's messy." She tilted her head, studying him. "Have we met?" He hesitated. "Maybe. A long time ago." She frowned, blinking rapidly, a glitch in her neural sync. "It passed quickly." "I don't remember," she said softly. "I know." They walked the perimeter gardens after she finished painting. Towering glass walls looked out into the dead star Arctis, 9 orbited. It no longer emitted light, only gravitational pull and endless darkness. "What do you remember?" Aaron asked carefully. She shrugged. "Nothing before the restoration clinic. 3 years ago. They say I was injured in an explosion. Brain trauma. Neural loss. Do you remember Earth?" She nodded. "Bits of it. Colors. Songs. I remember a man's voice in the dark, sometimes. I don't know if it's real." He stopped walking. "It's real." Celise turned, startled. "You know him?" "I was him," he whispered. She froze. "Don't play games with me," she said, her voice sharp. "I wouldn't," he said, stepping back. "I lost you once already." Celise looked at him, really looked. "Why didn't you tell me when you arrived?" "Because you deserve the choice." She stared out at the dead star. "Sometimes I wonder," she said, "if forgetting who I was a gift." That night, he couldn't sleep. He wandered the colony, letting its neural interface read him. Images flickered on the walls, fragments of memory it had pulled from his synaptic field. Her. Always her. Their first kiss, under falling asteroid dust. The day she'd hacked a Dominion cruiser mid-battle and saved his squad. The last time he saw her, cradled in his arms, bleeding, breath fading. He'd carried her out. Buried her name in the Assembly's missing in action files. Then learned months later that her body had been recovered, and mind wiped in recovery. He'd never stopped looking after that. Until now. Celise found him the next morning, eyes red but focused. "I ran a trace," she said without preamble. "Confirmed your identity. You were a rebel general. And, we were together." He nodded. "I also found restricted files. The ones they erased from my synapse banks. The ones you left out of your introduction." He waited. "You buried my name in the archives," she said. "You saved me. I failed to protect you." "No," she said. "You didn't." For a long moment, she stood silent. Then. "I dreamed about you. Every night. I didn't know your name. But I knew the way you made me feel." Aaron stepped closer. "And how's that?" "Safe," she whispered. "Like I didn't have to be perfect. Like I could fall apart and someone would still love me." He reached out, but stopped just short. "You don't have to love me back," he said. "Not for the past. Not for who we were. I just want you to know who you are." Celise closed the gap between them. "I don't remember the past," she said. "But I remember what matters." She kissed him, soft, searching, unsure. But it was enough. And this time, he let himself hope. The medship Valus Hope was never meant to drift. But when the evacuation turned chaotic and the jump drive ruptured mid-sequence, the ship was flung into uncharted space, bleeding energy and silence. Only one cryopod had remained active long enough to complete its cycle. Veyron Mail awoke alone. His first breath was a jolt, thin air, metallic and cold. A soft hiss greeted him, followed by flickering lights above his head. Pain cracked through his body like a thunderbolt. His right arm was immobile, braced in a field stasis cast. Ribs screamed with every breath. But he was alive. Barely. He tried to sit. Failed. A soft voice interrupted the darkness. You shouldn't move. He turned his head. A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, lean, clad in a plain medtech jumpsuit. She approached slowly, a bioluminescent band across her wrist identifying her as ship's medical personnel. I've sedated most of the nerve centers, she said. But if you fight the stasis too hard, it'll spike again. Who are you? He rasped. Atria Vel, she replied. Medical technician, class 3. I was assigned to the refugee wing before the incident. His vision swam. How many others made it? Atria paused. You're the only one left in cryo. Everyone else was either transferred before the drive failure, or didn't survive re-entry. She didn't mention the heat scars lining the forward med bay. She didn't mention how she'd spent 3 weeks alone, waking every day to silence and fire-damaged logs. Instead, she said, you were listed as high priority. I assumed you were someone important. Veyron gave a breathless laugh. Not anymore. He slumped back, unconscious again before the next heartbeat. Over the next 3 days, she nursed him. Gently. Methodically. She repaired the filtration systems by hand. Rebooted localized oxygen flow. Fed him nutrient gel when he could barely lift his head. He never asked why she stayed. And she never said. Only once, during a lucid spell, did he whisper, you have noble hands for a technician. Atria stilled. What do noble hands look like? Like yours, he murmured. Like someone who never worked a day in her life, until now. She didn't answer. But her silence told him he was right. By the 6th day, he could sit up. His hair was matted, his jaw unshaven, but his eyes had clarity again. He watched her as she ran diagnostics at a shattered terminal, bare fingers dancing across the exposed wiring like a pianist playing through static. You're not just a medic, he said finally. She didn't look at him. And you're not just a patient. He tilted his head. Fair. She turned then, slowly. My name is Atria Vel, she said again. But the title I don't use is Lady Atria, of House Vel, the ruling council of Miris. Veyron raised an eyebrow. Royalty. Technically. Her tone was dry. I left before my coronation. Joined the service under an alias. My family thought it was a phase. And now? She gestured to the drifting, broken ship around them. Now it's a sentence. Veyron leaned back, a wince crossing his face. So we're both fugitives in different ways. You weren't just a soldier, she said, eyes narrowing. I decrypted your name tag's data core. You're Veyron Mail. You led the 5th Resistance Fleet against the Dominion. Your ship, the Ruthless Grace, vanished 2 years ago. We were ambushed. I escaped in a medpod. His gaze dropped. I don't know who survived. You're a hero. No, his voice was flat. I'm a ghost. She didn't argue. Time passed strangely aboard Valus Hope. No day. No night. Just the pulsing hum of dying engines and Atria's quiet footsteps in the med bay. Veyron began to walk again, slowly. She gave him her hand without asking. He never thanked her with words. He didn't have to. It happened during a power failure. The lights dimmed. The temperature dropped. They sat beside the reactor core for heat, huddled in silence. "I used to paint," she said quietly, her arms wrapped around herself. "Before the war. I had a studio facing the Miran Sea. It smelled like brine and sun and oil. I used to sing," he said. "Off-key. My crew hated it." She smiled. "What changed?" He looked at his bandaged arm. "Everything." A pause. "Do you still remember the songs?" He didn't answer. But he hummed. She leaned her head against his shoulder, just for a moment. The core's light bathed them in quiet gold. Days blurred. They repaired what systems they could. Shared meals. Laughed, rarely. Slept, eventually, in the same small compartment to conserve heat. When he dreamed, he sometimes reached for her. And once, she didn't let go. The kiss was unexpected. She was rewiring the comms array. He reached to pass her a tool. Their hands touched. She looked at him. And he saw everything she'd never said in her eyes. He kissed her softly, reverently. Like a man grateful to be alive. Like a man who feared what it would cost. When they broke apart, she didn't speak. Neither did he. But something between them changed. Their moment was interrupted 2 days later. A long-range beacon flickered online, barely functional. A signal. A ship within reach. Salvage or rescue? They didn't know. But the message was clear: prepare for retrieval. They sat together that night, back in the med bay, watching the stars through a fractured port. "I don't want to leave this place," he said. "It's broken," she replied. "So are we." She rested her head against his. "What happens when we go back?" "I become a symbol again," he said. "And you?" "I become someone I never wanted to be." Veyron turned to her, voice steady. "Then we don't go back the way they expect." She took his hand. "I'd burn it all down," she said softly, "if it meant I didn't have to let go of this." He kissed her again. This time, with fire. This time, like he'd never get another chance.